Yeah, mind if I close the door?
No, sure. You can probably check the wiki for the wiki because we have a trigger warning in there.
Okay. Oh no. I think it's down.
Oh no, okay,
Well, let me
so
see, it's just the first page that I opened. Let me see this. Yeah, it's
okay,
the wiki's down.
we use the homophobic F slur at the top of the one I see.
Okay. It's just once.
Well, the evidence that we cite uses it a couple of times.
Okay.
And it's also in the 2AC.
Okay.
Maybe we should just say uses.
Yes.
Uses.
Yeah.
No, for next time.
Yeah,
I don't know why we said it. Tell them so. Yeah. Okay. Go to change. The one I see is sent.
What?
The one I see is sent.
Alright, I'll let you know when you get it. Okay.
Alright, is everybody ready?
Yep.
In 2001, a GPU-31 Joint Direct Attack munition was dropped on Afghanistan and was tagged with "hijack this fag" before its deployment. This marking alludes to the sexuality of terrorism. And through the synonymizing of the queer with the enemy, discourse in the war on terror has created an us versus them binary based on associating the Orientalist figure of the terrorist with sexual and racial progressivity, rehabilitating one's abject US LGBTQ+ communities within the purview of homonationalism. Pour on 7. The invocation of the terrorist square non-national versus racial as other young part of the normative script, the U.S. war on terror, but was pictures sponsored by associated with progressivity, homosexuality, film, having polygamy, old disabilities, or approach to see which means linked to the process of learning. There's bodies into the surfaces of the discipline and normalizing the worthy rehabilitation away from devising and and racial patriotism, but the terrorist figure is not merely racialized and sexualized body must be improperly racialized. Thus, the terrorist and the person being emasculated, the patriarchs are not opposed to oppositional entities, but Catholicism, the third binary reinforcement methods against foreign terrorists, people gays with homonational, proliferating sexuality, and the relation of nationalism, complicated economic implications, gas in the nation, and the support of heteronormativity, the Orientals and indication that a terrorist wanted to curse attack their accuracy, the U.S. nationalism, queers from their racial, sexual, other, forgetting conclusion between homosexuality, American nationalism, by national rhetoric, supply create conclusion, give by the game, queer subject, the most domesticated homosexual bodies, right ammunition to reinforce nationalist projects, or desire to become religious, producing material traits and evidence that the truth, counter evidence may exist to fight the unevenness of tolerance, because U.S. bases exist to core belief system, and the queer figure of terrorists corporealizes bodies through fear affects. The creation of the killable subject allows the preemptive logic of the drone assemblage, paradigmatic to the U.S. liberal rule and the war on terror. Wilcox in 16. People targeted by the drone are corporealized through an analog and digital modes of subjectification through the use of metadata and visual analysis as well as affective modes to understand sensing and feeling of people who are not only targeted by the basis of their behavior, the process of identification was that target was made possible based on the affective relation with the fear nature of the distinction which bodies feel about the affected and describes are based on the paranoid based now based on visual acuity but on motion rather than the drone assemblage enables certain characteristics to be attributed out of the process of racialization effect of affect works to reproduce bodies borders between bodies which are less white body can apart from the black body he can pursue the subject there's not red body that the terrorist enables the fear stick bodies that could be terrorist bodies preempted not the danger of no, but is of the no subject of the danger of not knowing of not enough evidence of legitimate is killing with evidence that the objects might be a threat or skewed up evidence against affectively that bodies are created as sudden during warfare, the fear circulates, the death and religious behavior, the predator cruciates, production of racialized others that must be destroyed, members of press terror, for violence to be corporalized, the military age, military injured people, and to generate hatred with humanization and war, just by narratives saying women killing anonymous message, drop probably the discourse of the purpose sexuality, violence, probably abnormality, sexual denial, sexuality, such gender, than others, as a persons of each of the affective relations, war and terrible generating of the military age, menaces, several from the racialization of the target of someone who can be killed, and then self-defense, mistake of killing women and children, reinforces the idea that all military age, legitimate target of production, killable bodies depends on common relation within the most opposing bodies to a drone assemblage, faith in a drone assemblage to accuse the target, correct bodies of disavowed and restored through the reassurance that it was always impossible. And here, those marked as queer embody the living death of the collateral subject. The dichotomy between combatant and non-combatant has collapsed. The queer is defined by permanent war rather than merely a certain sexuality or identity. That's Coates in 19. Queers protection on individuals who experience things suicide are regardless of identity or placing in relation to the other both conceptions like that and produce charity screening focus on the human for greatest life form that exists margin of plus making any void any essential universalist watching categories for remain critical of nationalism or queer imperialism and main here it's critical in which self queers being disruptive and prevalent discourse of sexuality viable politics rights of gender masculinity middle class queer histories related constantly the archetype queer theory the academy as much militarization and she is considered life as well eligible and collateral they have been consigned to different disciplinary fear hegemonic deployment of death as a life form as a form of sovereignty of subjugation of life to power that queer neurology reveals self harms life to the war from those garbage either less elections subject to terms of shooting of the living dead the private legal production collateral subject to that at any time of permanent war to live without a future and prefer or impact calculus discourse acts as a justification for violence. It's a question of bodies made available for killing. That's Pour et al. In 16. The war on terror is leaves 1.3 million, statistically the vast number of injured and permanently disabled and debilitated, the rapid of the calculation of collateral damage reasons made available for killing, brutalization, debilitation through sexualized, gender, middle-class, and racialized international discourses about Islamic Arabs and Middle East. The 1AC desires not to simply describe what weapons are, but what they can do. Where the resolution says reduce, we explode. Where the resolution says stop, we say detonate. Let's go further still. We haven't sufficiently dismantled ourselves. We should deploy the gay bomb. And embracing the monstrous potential of the queer figure operates as a reverse discourse, hacking the paranoid fear of U.S. empire. That's Cruz in 10. To suggest every queer practice and describe the state issues and implicit the assemblage is pregnant frame within society's control and converts in form of presence to construction of fake subjects of terrorism queers a picture surface of the provider jobs and hijack the five employed the probably explore the possibilities queer technology for pure technical agencies. This project tells to address how queers can maintain technology and create conditions for connectivity. Discourse of queer theory operates as a rhetoric of freedom. The gay bomb is reappropriation of the image and rhetoric of use of terrorist assemblages and queer cultures and practice of form of political courses. The gay bomb can be a reverse discourse of queer terrorist assemblage of network activists. The bomb is a hacked concept intercepting flows and signals of terrorist paranoid network fear distributed welfare and homophobic weaponry. The gay bomb is a queer bomb, a tactical understanding of action, and recreating and creating queer utopias represents an affective orientation that requires an alternative infliction of fear. Only our embrace of affective methodologies invites an unscriptable futures outside of the grasp of control. McManus and 11. Utopian affect means enough to keep life possibility of imagining a future radically other cannot be determined fear affect shapes subjects within the divide decisive way market and determinants and determines the affect for stabilization pattern through economic technology surveillance utopian affect not demand physical presence of bodies at absolutely vital demonstration protest bodies the proximity of bodies necessary for circulation utopian affect the indeterminacy of affect is a weapon utopian affect galvanizes politics to be to extend human potential or effective capacity natural mobilization utopian affect is not a fixed fear but of influence fear determining intervening in few ways fear stabilizes the mind of alternative technology central to the production fear against itself fear touches use surveillance technology against police hopes and natural to fear only as far as internet hopes made out of the same material same matter as voice fear seems to be made out of matter available in the present, but with different trajectories. The utopian affects made up of hope and fear and anxiety rather than opposing. Utopian who provide critical agency through process that remain open and undetermined. And we play the game through an affective politics. Only our pedagogical model deconstructs the violent binaries of us versus them, conjured by the fear discourse. If we win a risk that our model shifts towards a net ethical affective orientation, vote AF. Zemblas and 9. Discourses fear work on educational context and drop boundaries between us and them. It establishes distance between the other as a danger. This fear provides an influential affective orientation for educational system and analyzing fear is important for educators who want to establish a different affective that is not that deconstruct arbitrary bound information. The educators are committed to inspire social change. Much work needs to be done at an affective level and disavow materiality untouched by affect. Its fantasies represent a necessary condition of subjectivity. Our project doesn't intend to retreat to a precognitive subject, but reorient how we view the world and others. Shanks in 15. Affect structure political as well as personal lives, and not fantasy that marks the failure of the rational subject, but fantasy is a condition of political subjectivity. So prolonged questions against satisfying the affective attachments or of our social and political condition in favor of a notion of reasoning untouched by affect. The possibility of other futures begins in a potentialized present ranking of a world requires fantasy to monitor programs of action on behalf of what the present can become to work from. Affect is not until flight from the affective fear, but requires an orientation rhetoric includes drawing new images into rhetoric and only strikes affectivity, but affect may also reorient our encounters with the world and others. And paranoid temporalities suppress the openness of politics and attempt to master the ebb and flow of futurity's waves. Instead, embrace the anticipatory temporality of the gay bomb's affective rupture. Pour on 7. Anticipatory temporality seeks to affect futurity, as it refuses to script attain from a paranoid temporality embedded in our economy to ensure against future catastrophe. We are never safe, healthy, or good enough driven by repetition of the same rather than openness. Disruption paranoid produces a suppression of politics. Anticipatory temporality to reflect an open and positively enticing and knowable political futures, taking risks rather than guarding. And ontogenetics is the metaphysical prior to being and becoming. All identities and positionalities are retrospective points of the constant affective movement of assemblages. Poor on 7. Identities are byproduct of attempts to quell the perpetual movement of assemblage, becoming surface line position, secondary to movement, and derived from it. This is ontogenetic, different move from ontology to ontogenesis is also relevant to affects in the process of the body feedback and feed forward or recursivity in addition to converting distance into intensity, folds the dimensions of time into each other. An ontogenetic dimension prior to the separating out of space and then time linear time like position grid of space would be emergent qualities. Ontogenetic dimension is prior but not pre. The ontogenetic dimension enables an emergent bifurcation of both time and space. Cross X.
Okay, actually, I'm not asking a quick question. Just what's your plain text?
We have, so like, we should deploy the gay bomb.
Okay, so can you explain that?
Like what the gay bomb or like the plan text is as a whole?
Just like as a whole, like what
Okay.
is the actual text?
Sure. So we would argue like, so like the gay bomb is kind of an endorsement and or embracement of the affective fear of the other. Right, so we've isolated that like queerness is like inherently an us versus them binary. It creates the binary between like the good homonational queer subject, which is like the like white queer who's wrapping themselves in like an American flag and has a white picket fence. That would be an example of kind of like the good homonational queer, whereas the affective fear is attached to the kind of like queer Islamic terrorist, i.e. like Osama bin Laden is kind of what the card at the top of the 1AC isolates is an example of kind of that affective fear attached to those queered bodies. So we would say that the exploding or deploying the gay bomb would be an endorsement of, or like kind of an affirmation of that affective fear to kind of put those two dichotomies into conflict with one another.
Wait, so what is the gay bomb?
That's the gay bomb is affirming the affective fear to put those two categories into I don't know what to put them into.
Wait, so
like conflict with one another. It's kind of like to force us to question those binaries.
Okay. So wait, in what way are you actually reducing like arms sales from the U.S.?
We would argue this is a like a what do we call it?
This is a deregulatory movement. We argue that exploiting the gay bomb hacks into these like systems of control that regulate arms circulation.
Right.
Okay, fair enough.
We're gonna see cool.
Alright, next questions.
Can you go into the Cruise 10 card a little bit more for me and just explain it in words?
Right, so Cruise 10 I think does a little bit of the stuff that I already talked about, kind of like embracing that affective fear will allow us to hack into those methods of capital or to kind of hack into the idea of homonationalism as a whole that's like led to things like the war on terror. So like using that paranoid fear against U.S. empire, against homonationalism is the way that we can combat U.S. control or combat like things like the reason that we even engaged in the war on terror in the first place.
And Cruz goes into how like the gay bomb is a hacking of these technologies of fear. Specifically, it references like the appropriation of this rhetoric surrounding homonationalism.
Can you talk a little bit more about homonationalism for me? Just explain it, like the concept as a whole.
Sure. So like homonationalism is what oftentimes has been like forced onto like I guess queerness as an identity, right? What would we? I mean, in the context of the AF, do you want to? I feel like you can do more of the explanation.
Sure. So we say that homonationalism is the idea of it comes out of millennial gay rights discourses. This idea of a good queer that is a patriotic queer, often whitened and capitalist. And we argue that queer people in the U.S. need to conform to this notion of an idealized queer subject that is very normative, pro-state, and sort of like has assimilated in many ways into mainstream culture, like gay marriage.
Okay, we're going to take running prep.
Cool.
you guys started debating yet?
Yeah.
No, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I forgot to hit start. I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
Thank you.
Be like that sometimes.
C-Sprout, 350 unused. Let me email it out. Order is 6 off in case. Did y'all get that?
Yeah, 1 second.
Judge ready? Opponent's ready?
Give me just a second. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, 8 minutes on the clock. Time starts now. Topicality, substantiability. Substantially reducing military contracts means a 25% reduction in the value of the contract. UCS and 10. Description of the various components contractors produce commercial items controlled under the AECA USML. Termination or substantial reduction in major defense programs. The Secretary of Defense shall identify each contract under major defense programs of the DoD that will be substantially reduced. The term substantial reduction and substantially reduced with respect to the defense contract means a reduction of 25% or more in the total dollar value of the funds obligated to the contract. To reduce the value of the contract, the AF must amend the contract, cancel the contract, or modify the contract. Suspensions don't change the value. DSCA 19. Suspension and cancellation. Suspension of delivery is not the same as FMS case cancellation or contract termination action. DSCA notifies when suspensions are lifted. New LOAs are not signed. Contracts have been awarded. Continue, however, material en route in the country is not delivered and is retained under USG control. FMS cases may amend or modify to the accommodate changes to the scope of the case in the key of considering and deciding an amendment, modification, or new LOA scope. Changes takes place when the original purpose changes, reflected through an increase or decrease in dollar value. Major increases in such in scope, such as additions, a dollar value, increases or decreases in blanket order lines, addition or deletion of requirements, revisiting line item descriptions or notes to increase or decrease scope. U.S. Unilateral changes to the FMS cases are made by modification and do not require acceptance by the purchaser. Changes that may be done using a modification, increasing or decreasing line values, revising the terms of sale, case cancellation. The USG may cancel a case or any part of the case when U.S. national interests are required. That's a voter limits. There's an infinite permutation of possible conditions that massively expands the topic and makes neg research impossible to ground. Country complying means that it might not be a reduction in sales, allowing for the app to spike out of all this had links. 3. Precision. We're reading EV defining substantial reduction for the U.S. code in the ages, whatever, just cut that. Topicality 2. Interpretation. Direct commercial sales are directly with the industry. NDIA 19. DCS process, the purchaser consults directly with the industry about specific product services. The Pentagon does not support these types of mission requirements, their stockpiles, or their annual budget. The State Department executes authority in issuing export licenses. Violation, they did not fit the resolution to the strict expectations justified by the need to balance AF and neg ground, and through their interpretation standards neg ground. It is important that our opponent remains strictly topical to the resolution as to balance AF and neg ground. Fairness and education, to keep the rounds productive and effective, we need to make sure that we have stable balance of arguments in both sides' voters. The ballot must go to the negation, because otherwise it will set a precedent that hurts neg ground and fairness and education debate. Topicality is a stock issue, alongside solvency, harms, inherency, and significance deemed of the utmost importance in a debate round. This is prevalent in the main issue. Topicality 3, interpretation. Foreign military systems direct USFG to international partners and organizations. Defense Security Corporation Agency 19. Foreign military sales is the U.S. government for transferring defense articles, services, and training to international partners and international organizations. The Defense Security Corporation Agency administered the FMS program for the Department of Defense. Under FMS, the U.S. government uses DoD acquisition systems to produce defense articles and services on behalf of the partners. Violation, they did not fit the resolution justified by the need to balance AF and neg ground through the top standards. Neg ground is important that our opponent remains strictly on topic. It's just the same standards and same voters. Topicality 4, interpretation. Reduces, diminish in size, amount, extent, or number. Merriam-Webster. To diminish in size, amount, extent, or number. Same violation standards and voters as before. Interpretation number 5, should imply a conditional approach. Merriam-Webster used an auxiliary function such as to express condition. If he, she should live his father would die. Violation standards and voters are the same as above. And this is interpretation 6. The federal government is the central government in D.C. In Carta 5. The combination of agencies responsible for carrying out operations of the U.S. federal government of the U.S. is centered in Washington, D.C. Same violation standard as voters as above. Judge, it is crucial that you vote for the negative side due to the fact that the opponent is clearly untopical and are just trying to sway the debate in their favor by running a non-topical app. They are inherently hurting the sport of debate because they're removing any chance of the negative winning because they take away all ground by running obscure apps that are seen in very few other cases, and therefore they should not be allowed in debate because it hurts fairness, education, and goes against a stock voting issue. Now onto their case. Yes.
Are you good for president?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Do all of your interpretations require that we go through the USFG?
Yes.
Yes, okay, cool. what are examples of net ground that you're losing?
Okay, so essentially, you basically have the ability to kick out of in pretty much any DA because you have no direct links into the topic.
Okay, interesting. And why is that good? Why are dis ads specifically good?
Okay, so the reason dis ads are good is because they're a stock argument that allows like the negative to be able to run just like standard arguments.
Why are standard arguments good?
Because it allows for us to like have a ground that we can research. Like it gives us a start for our research, and without that, it makes the debate basically just completely unfair.
And why is fairness good?
Okay, so fairness is good because it's important that we like promote fairness in education if we want to like keep the sport of debate like long-standing.
Right, but you just said fairness is good because of debate. Like what specifically about fairness uniquely makes it good?
Okay, so fairness basically allows debate to like maintain like functional. Like if AF wins every round because they can run whatever they want, then people are going to lose interest in the sport of debate, and it's going to become completely AF-sided.
Right, but that's not fairness.
How is that not fair?
Well, you say that the AF will win every time.
Yeah, that's
what about
inherently unfair.
That's inherently unfair.
For the AF to win every time is unfair.
And what is fairness?
Okay, so fairness would allow each team's ability to win be based off of like skill and research.
Okay, what's the bright line for that?
What do you mean by that?
Like how do you determine when something is more or less fair?
Okay, so basically just a very generic way to like measure if something is fair is just like, so if you had completely equal teams running both cases, who would win, right? So like for like a random neg team to just come up, or just say a neg and AF team are like the same skill level, right? If you give the AF team your AF and then you give the neg team like 5 dis ads, the AF is going to win almost every time because.
But that's right. That's predicated off of like the same skills. So then does it mean that like structural fairness comes before like procedural fairness then?
Can you elaborate on what you're saying?
That's fine. I can move on.
Okay.
So like, I guess the education that you're trying to garner, right, is like, you've talked about disadvantages a lot. Why are disadvantages specifically uniquely key to like topic education?
Okay, because it gives the neg like a very like broad ground of like research that they can do on the topic. Whereas if I'm having to constantly just like read topicality arguments, it's a waste of all of our time in the round because we're effectively gaining no knowledge. We're just talking about how you're not on topic.
Right, you've given one example of an off-case argument. Like, why is that specifically good?
Okay, well,
why are extinction impacts in debate good?
Okay, well, theoretically, you could also say that counterclaims and critiques and so, such and such are also good arguments just because they allow like the negative to like research other things other than just why the AF is not on topic.
Okay, sure. So then if we can give you examples of critiques that you could have read against the AF, does that mean that we win?
Well, no, not necessarily, because you've also like blocked out several other arguments. Okay.
Send this.
Okay. I'm gonna ask that you flow all of this on one page.
All the teams already there. Great.
That's gonna be in case and whichever T.
Here, I haven't gotten it yet.
Okay. It's gonna be in case in the whatever T flow you wanted to do.
It's like those American Girl doll books. It's like you pick. Decide your future.
Right. Did you get it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Is anybody not ready? The war on terror is executed through preemptive strikes afforded by the discourses that attach the AF interfere to the figure of the terrorist, creates collateral subjects prone to death at any time, except Wilcox and Coates. The gay bomb represents a discursive rupture that destroys the us versus them in the war on terror, based on rewiring the image of hijack this flag. Subjects once crafted by fear now decide of openness to alternative futurities. This orientation prioritizes a stance of queer utopianism rather than paranoid temporality that is best for resolving affective control and cruise simplest and McNanus. In critical framing argument, fear is an inevitable production of the affective economy. That means it is only a question of our orientations towards the affective in this this debate around a lightning question if you're greenless control, creating faithless reaction to resistance and silence is activism. Part 7. Control showless life as attention, bearing anxiety, disappearing your vertigo, what can explain creating wicked says outside of the silent discord of industry, not only put everything to be denied, but also the working control of the control, so you're not silenced, but it's alternative resistance, so really hurts and responded to the state. And weaponizing capitalism against itself, you're hacking and disciplinary tactics of culture, you want to say pragmatic instance of career assumptions, Cruise 10. The possible control separate from source of knowledge, so homo nationalism is what the markets have tended by being created the smoke and separate, heating and separate, manipulating the function of the strategy of intentional for capitalism, for particular capital, and identities into a weapon upon itself, the classic toxic culture, based on very paid by the packing social engineering notion of assumption is not technological systems of discipline and control framework. Alright, they said in cross-sects that each interpretation requires that we go through the USFG, so I'm not going to answer each individual interpretation because all of them necessitate going through the USFG. On that basis, like whether we're substantial, going through industry, etc., don't matter. All my offense is going to be predicated off of the USFG.
We turn the same standards.
Yeah. First is we meet their interpretation of e-bombs are a deregulatory move that hack into establishments of control like arms controls governmentality. Second is the countertrip. ASCO 7 affective affirmation at the top. And 3 is the detached affectivity net benefit. The countertrip necessitates the debaters analyze their affective attachments to the topic and debate as activity in the act of affirming. The proliferation of disembodied acts constantly distances debaters from the arguments we talk about. It results completely with instructions of violence. Debaters can have gained skills and education from reading their arguments. The results then you need to take action outside of debate. The impact is cogs in the machine. Their skills often affirms one's own being a cog in the machine, which mirrors the gamification of the workers, and we are constantly trying to level up and get more points. This turns debate is a game. Their model produces debaters who sell their skills to the highest bidder in the constant quest for a promotion or level up. Their model only results in good military planners who use what they've learned on this topic to enter the military-industrial complex, and by requiring debaters to understand and analyze their affectivity, the counter deconstructs the dichotomy between violence over there and over here, and calls into a question in relation to debate. And force and negative still access to the ground. The state should be arms, not the USFG answers their standards and neg ground arguments. First is education at benefit. The USFG is at the part of the topic every year. Court acts like politics as condition counterfeits, etc. are recycled every year, reduces stale debate, shifting the stasis to arms control, allows us to effectively analyze the implications of arms control and circulation instead of just debating ticky-tacky politics scenarios. And the second is that the counter-trip still gives the neg their ground. The role of the negative is to defend the status quo or competitive method. You could be effervescent and self-lunanism, cap, dark delusion, liberalism good, drone tricks good, see the political hedge decide, the tie, semi cap, etc. And on the fairness debate versus appellability decide, the framework creates an ideal model of how creative innovation. This is in the state always condemns us using deviant suggestion. This is the logic of the grid. It not only limits potentiality for knowledge production, but also creates control societies where we constantly police ourselves and others to strive to constructive values and compatible positionalities and fairnesses. Second is that solving fairness is impossible. Structural fairness is prior to accessing any procedural fairness. Don't buy that your ballot can resolve procedural fairness. These structural restrictions make any fairness almost negligible. Chaos are not the reason debate is an unfair activity, but rather vast differences in coaching, funding, travel regulations, etc. That means that you should have a very high threshold, low threshold for the palatability to decide in a world where at best they resolve only a minuscule amount of fairness. And on the education debate versus that fiat turns education, the way you play the game through the resolution ignores how policy action actually works. Make them prove by reading and plain terms that teaches us about the government or anything useful when policy acts just say durable fiat in relation to anything that is remotely about their plan or analyzing how their plan would act in the real world. That proves that fiat doesn't give us education. And second is that our education outweighs the skills we learn here don't determine the courses of our lives, but the literature we engage in does. Engaging with key literature is uniquely good because it forces us to reconsider our subpositions in the space and within broader structures. They can't win that going for an extinction impact gives us more valuable education than engaging in discussions about homo nationalism or self-inclusionism. And 3C, education, even if it turns their education, the use of G as a stasis point allows teams to recycle generic policy arguments every year, producing still debates and preventing us from engaging with the topic or what it means to talk about arms control on the standards debate versus the first is becoming decide. Static existences are illusory. Everything is constantly in flux. That means to keep predictable limits, and it's impossible because it can't resolve the metaphysical underpinnings that make pure limits, predictability, and competitive equity unattainable. The impact as a result of attempting impossible tasks creates inescapable self-hatred. And 2 is that no model can solve critical dichotomical aspects exist even if you vote neg. There's only a chance that they limit out deviant values in their quest for the unattainable perfect model and lead to all of our offense. Their standards are infinitely regressive because there's no objective threshold for one we have fit into their model. People run topicality against every single laugh and will print the TVA versus the civic homosexuality decide firm because nothing but an attempt to force us into the clutches of civic homosexuality, reinforcing homo nationalism by coercing into engaging with the political. The negative reinforces the popular desire for fascism, legitimizes claims for American exceptionalism. Source key 10. Positive marketing is made a model of political processes, idealized over overwhelmed. The deconstructive efforts on to consensus of the structure disrupts that represented directly to non-inclusive attitude to action and growing public support for once a genocide felt to for fashion flies words away from liberalism that idealizes activists and these motives produce daily micro-fashions but activists may put it on the measure form that there's always an element that escapes containment. And 2 is the strategic disengagement is that the next model allows them to revert to a generic shot where they go for self-love and go for whatever was undercover. They never actually engage in a discussion of the af in the way that they claim to, rather the debate resolves into a condition counterplan or generic politics scenario. That means that affirmative education is never accessible under their model. And switch side debate versus that switch side links to the civic homosexuality distance, which must reinforce homogenesis with new state engagement, and it doesn't solve. If it does solve our offense, why didn't they read their F on the negative? Switch side debate is so crucial to getting education in class. They could have read the TV as a counterplane or their F. And two is that the content of the case never actually discussed because they reach framing on us even when we're negative. Always prioritizes policy discussions and impacts, limiting down our ability to have these discussions, choosing to affirm the content of the one EC is key to check teams that never want to have the discussion of our F and on truth testing. Truth testing is no reason not to weight the F. They still have to prove the ask theory and method and will segments of will to truth. They said the negative means a drawing out of truth from the world. They assume the truth is a one-to-one correspondence to reality that makes that attempts to purge dialogical forms of understanding, like the act. The idea of truth testing creates a lash out that attempts to secure the objective meaning of our affirmative, revealing their own insecurity, that their extinctionaries might not be true. This logic of codification seeks to render everything into clearly demarcated categories. Rather than viewing the world through this binary, we should instead refuse this codification of knowledge and prefer a dialogical approach. And three is that truth testing is tautological. We can't truth test truth testing under that logic. You can presume that is a false argument because we can't engage in a debate about whether or not truth testing solves. And you had found you could maybe have read any counter method determines that the status quo. We read a case list on the stasis plate, and class just allows the negative to never engage with the substance of the app. That affects all of our education claims because they can just read it out without having a conversation about their method and theory becoming. Segments that durable free app proves that class is not unique. Policy apps still use it to get out of solvency deficits. Do you want to say anything else? Stock issues, not a reason to vote neg because, like, no warrant to why stock issues are good. It's an outmoded, like, dated model of debate. Yeah. Communications, stock issues, limits around decision.
We've turned our idea of legal precision because we think that the education that they predicate on precision
Durable
is like
fiat turns precision. When you present a policy app with like legal precision arguments about why they don't solve, they durable fiat out of it. Okay.
Okay, so why do you think you're inherently topical?
Why do we think we're inherently topical?
Yeah.
We don't. I mean, yeah. So we think that our interpretation of the topic is that the gay bomb sort of hacks into these regulatory models.
But can you explain how that works? Like,
You decrease the government's control on things like this. Could be an example of like decreasing the amount of weapons writ large if we explode the gay bomb.
So like in a world where this sort of drone rhetoric is used to justify things like the war on terror, military presence abroad, etc., when we hack into those discourses that are a justification for that, that results in a reduction of arms.
I still don't understand how that process
Sure.
works.
So like argument is that that this homonationalism is a justification for the war on terror, military presence abroad, the circulation of arms control, etc., especially the securitization of other states and allies in the region in order to sort of defend against like the threat of terrorism. So when we explode those discourses and rupture that us versus them, we reduce the number of the arms presence because there's no longer that justification of the war on terror to have that military presence.
Okay. Do you have a question? Alright, yeah, that's it. Now we're gonna go on. I still got the 220 remaining. No, the final.
Do you want me to go part-time?
No.
Yeah, I'll go and keep prepping. Okay, we're gonna stop prep. That's another 20 seconds. He's starting off with our files here. With 2 minutes remaining. There's the first one, and she's sending the second one. There should be 2 separate emails.
No, I just got the 2.
Like, if y'all have the second one on here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you got the.
Okay, so, what's the word?
I don't know.
T and then K.
I think that is.
Yeah. Judge ready? Opponent ready? One, interpretation that AF must specify all agents involved in the operationalization of the plan. The United States federal government is contestable assemblage of multiple moving parts. Mueller 15. The state is assemblage. It makes part resonate together. Very diverse planes of order, geographic, ethnic, linguistic, moral, economic, technological, particularities. The state becomes an effect rather than the origin of power. An increasing number of scholars have, over the past years, joined the chorus in calling for seeing the state as an assemblage of heterogeneous elements and reconstructing the social material basis of its functioning. Splatial state power neither exists prior, it is evenly distributed in the pace. It runs up against obstacles, works better in some places than in others, is more contested here and is less contested there. 2, violation. The act does not specify all agents who act in the plan. 3, the first impact is political education. Various agents work to pass, implement, and enforce legislation. It is most real world for the act to defend all actors required for the plan. Only our interpretation preserved mechanism and implementation debates, which are crucial for political advocacy skills. A, real-world impacts. The act impacts are real and catastrophic for many people. Failure to be fully informed about all agents of planned action means we risk advocating for bad or incomplete policies, which exacerbates structural inequality and turns act sovereignty. Intersectionalism. Policy implementation very frequently neglects those most vulnerable to structural violence. Only specifying all agents of planned action can overcome state negligence and create intersectional policies that result in material change. 4, the The second impact is truth testing. Without a robust debate about all agents involved, the plan can't be proven good or bad. The vast majority of app implementation remains untested. This is an independent reason to vote neg or presumption because we can't verify the truth of app advantages. 3. The third impact is neg ground. Neg team should get links to every part of the plan from passage to enforcement. Failure to specify leads to unstable link ground and allows the app to be a moving target, making it impossible to be neg. 6. The fourth impact is time and strategy skew. The app made the choice not to specify all actors in the 1AC. Pre-round prep is also already skewed. Debate is a game of inches, not miles. Neg on theory. App gets infinite prep time and first and last speech. 7. Reject argument and the team theory is a voter for real world education and competitive equality. Now on to K. Queer purity pin. Refusal of queer critique to engage the state recreates neoliberal ideology by falsely staticizing the state as always violent. Tactical engagement is better than pure rejection. $1.15. State phobia is deeply inscribed in liberal and neoliberal ideas of civil society. In contrast, they support civil society campaigns like pinkwashing that increasing deploy the strategy of surveillance for shaming states into good behavior. The rejection of all feminist queer politics oriented towards the state as part of a biopolitical agenda is genuine state-phobic rhetoric. Post-colonial queer feminists are caught in an ambient double bind of the state. On the one hand, the state has historically been the source of violence and repression, and yet queer strategy seeks to instrumentalize the state to promote sexual justice, even as the state is known to perpetuate heteronormative ideologies which are funding myth for nations. The hope is that the state can function as a site of redress. Despite the problematic track record with regard to sexual politics of all nation states, it's dangerous to disregard the immense political implications of state-phobic positions, increasing popular and radical discourse. This is a plea of statism. Rather, one must be aware of the dangers of the replacement of states with non-actors as motors of justice. The recent anti-static stance within post-colonial queer scholarship is alarming, as it ignores the importance of the states for those citizens who do not have access to transnational counter-public spheres to address their grievances. Decolonization, whether in the USA, Israel, or India, cannot be achieved merely through a strategic of shaming a state. Rather, it is imperative to enable vulnerable, disenfranchised individuals and groups to access the states accordingly. Instead of a for or against position, the more challenged question is how to reinvigorate the state, given that its institution and policies are the mobile effect of a regime of multiple governmentalities. The challenge is how to pursue a non-state phobic queer politics that at the same time neither rationalize the biopolitical state nor makes the queer bodies governable. In post-colonial texts, the state is like a pharmacon, both poison and medicine. Post-colonial queer must explore the strategy of converting poisons into counterpoisons. The ambient function of the states must be addressed. The inherent contradictions must be engaged with violence, injustice, ideology, and emancipation, law, and discipline. If the state has no stable essence, there is marked by undecidedly or doubleness, the sole focus of the negative aspect of the pharmacon, namely the destructive and repressive traits, neutralize and ignore enabling and empowering aspects. Post-colonial queer feminist politics must transform poison into remedy and formulate critiques of beyond state phobia a challenging task, but anything else would be too risky. Queer movement must work through the law, can work to dismantle it, but particular demands keys fade. 11 trans people are orientating queer resistance toward negation and failure lost in a purely reactory politics and actively preclude our and hopeful futures engage with the particular context of militarism is vital. Hall 14. If the
Okay, random question. What happens to our speeder points if we forfeit?
I don't know, I got that as happening.
Okay.
Do y'all know by any chance?
We don't.
No.
So are you novices?
Yeah.
Okay. It's totally up to you.
Okay.
I know that this is not an ideal round.
Yeah, no, we
but,
came in and they were like, yeah, they're definitely not gonna run a KF.
No.
Oh.
Well, and whoever was advising you is very wrong. There's only one
Yeah.
thing on the wiki is
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like we talked about this with our coaches, and we were like, we want to make this an educational round for you all.
Yeah.
Too.
Mhm.
So just given that, I mean,
Okay.
it's up to you.
I mean, I think it might be worth it to continue debating, and then we can talk about it after.
Okay.
If that'd be better. I don't, but like, I mean, we're also like debaters, so.
Yeah. I don't know, I just don't wanna keep like wasting y'all's time.
yeah.
No, you're not
Okay.
at all.
what
This is-
literally what else would we be doing?
Yeah.
We'd
I
just
mean-
be
And
sitting
also
out there doing
prepping.
Because the
nothing.
thing is,
Yeah.
we could go back and like prep for our next round,
Yeah.
which is why, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, if y'all just wanna continue, may as well.
I mean, like we're both like members of our squad that have been there for a long time,
Yeah.
and like helping novices, educating novices,
Yeah.
like is important to us,
Mhm.
right? Even if it's not our novices.
Yeah.
We've all had this round.
Yeah.
We
Absolutely.
have all had this round.
One of the coaches that I have right now made me cry when I was in 8th grade because he read a KF against me, and now he's one of my coaches. So, what a weird situation to be in.
Oh no.
So at least you're not crying.
Yeah.
Why don't we? I mean, it's good. I think it's education.
Okay.
Cool.
Let's see, then.
You good?
Yeah.
Alright, so let's start with the A-spec argument. If we don't work through the USFG, how do we specify which USFG actors we use?
Wait, wouldn't using non-USFG actors be non-topical due to the fact that we said in our topicality that it was non-topical?
You didn't extend any of those interpretations.
Fair enough.
Okay, so why is political education important? In the context of your standards, APACs? So like why should we get policy education from debate?
Because it's something that you really don't get from other sources, and it's like a unique education that you can get from debate that you really can't get from any other areas. So it's important to like protect it and like allow for education, because when you run like non-typical non-topical apps, you're like harming the education of the neg because you're preventing them from like learning about like these policies, and like you said, like how they may only be like applicable if you go into like a military industrial like type field. It can be like universally helpful because it can help us like make more informed decisions just in general. And like it also reminds us that like it's important to like set boundaries about like what should be acceptable and what should not be acceptable just in general. So I feel like by not running like traditional topical apps, you're being inherently, you're just like going outside the boundaries, and like you call it yourself a game, like you can't break rules of a game without punishment. So I think it should be fair to like.
So is the education of the app important?
Yes, the education of both is important, but we can both be educated without having to run non-topical apps.
Okay, so how do we access the education of the app in your model of debate?
Can you rephrase that?
So if we have to run a topical app, how do we access the discussion of our app?
So like to access it, do you mean like to create an app or?
No, like how do we have these discussions that we're having in this round with our critical app if we read a policy guide.
Like, if you read a policy app, we would be able to, like, discuss these things without having to, like, waste time reading topicality arguments. So it would, like, almost, improve the education of both sides, because we're able to run more, like, traditional arguments that would be able to, like, it would have more real-world impacts.
But where in that scenario do we have a discussion about gay bombs, the war on terror, homo nationalism?
The thing is, like, that's not directly linked to the topic. So, like, if we had, like, a topic that it more directly linked into, then it would be, like, a situation to discuss that. But, like, we're here to discuss, like, should we reduce, like, international arms sales from the U.S. So I feel like we should be able to focus more on that than gay bombs.
Close enough.
Yes, let's go ahead and take those two. Wait, if we don't extend T in the 2AC, can we extend it in the, or the 2 and C, can we extend it in the 1 and R?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I stop prep and just wait until she gets back, or?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna stop prep with a minute left, and I'll just reread cards, I guess, so use analytics.
I'll tell you the two things outside of actually debating, like in regular rounds, that helped me get better the most were giving speeches off the dome. Because you have those moments where it's just like, wait, I got it, forget everything I just said, here's the real answer. And judging other people, you're like, oh wait, I do that.
Cause like I judged middle school LD last year,
Yeah.
but I don't know how much that
Yeah,
helped.
and you know, just watching other people debate and like being
Yeah.
able to spot fallacies in their logic or be like, what you said like that, I didn't like that.
Yeah.
You'd be like, I'm never gonna say that again, even though I've definitely said it before, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, so we're both new to policy. She's new to debate in general. I did LD in middle school.
Yeah, it's scary.
Miles and I, my old partner and I, hit a really critical femme app, and we read topicality.
Yeah.
And they stood up in the 2AC and were going crazy, spreading like nobody's business and making all these really cool arguments. And I stood up in my my 1 and R and I was like, what if I agree with that? I think that's good. Just that, I was like they shouldn't get to read it because I like it, and I don't want to say that's bad.
It's me making face upside down. I'm like, I don't know how to answer this, I like it.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part to be. I don't want to defend anything else. I'm guessing it's gonna be T.
Yeah. We'll just go ahead and use times this. 5 minutes on the clock, time starts now. Judge, prefer our interpretations on our topicality. I'd first start with first topicality on substantial. Judge, we use evidence directly from the military, which you should prefer due to the fact that it's more directly linked to the topic than my opponent's. We're specifically saying that it requires a 25% increase to be considered substantial, and the opponent has provided no evidence that it is an increase of more or a decrease of more than 25%. Therefore, Judge, the opponent is untopical on that. Now, on to my second interpretation on direct commercial sales. Judge, I can go ahead and link this in with foreign military sales as well. Judge, the opponent not once mentioned direct commercial sales or foreign military sales in their affirmative case. Therefore, Judge, this is a critical voting issue because they're being inherently untopical by not mentioning either direct commercial sales or foreign military sales, and instead are trying to claim that they're going to decrease sales by exploding this quote-unquote gay bomb, which she is not which they have failed to link into either direct commercial sales or foreign military sales. On to my fourth interpretation. actually, never mind. I'm gonna just concede that one. Fifth interpretation. It implies like a conditional approach. Therefore, they need to like express condition inside of theirs. And then also, their link prefer our interpretation on federal government. Actually, I don't even know what I'm reading. Judge, I would like to re-specify my standards and voters for topicality. This debate standards. Neg ground. It is important that our opponent remain strictly topical to the resolution as to balance aft and neg ground, fairness and education, and to keep the round productive and educative. And need to make sure that we have a stable balance of arguments for both sides. Judge, we're not taking away the education from the aft by saying that they can't run their K-afts. We're simply saying that it's important to give both sides equal education, which can only be achieved by running more traditional affirmatives that allow both sides to have fair ground and be able to have a fair research burden due to the fact that the opponent, that the affirmative has almost no research burden due to the fact that they can simply research one specific field, whereas the negative has to extensively research a whole load of fields. So by running a K-off, they're being inherently unfair to the negative, and that they are they're drastically increasing the research burden by opening up to millions of tiny apps that could be running. That could be run is like any random thing, input any simple connection by saying simply that, oh, this could have this distant link to this, and claiming that it's topical. Judge, this is a critical voting issue because, and if they fail to address this, they deserve the ballot should go to the negative because we're trying to balance the ground and keep the research burden fair because it's impossible to research literally everything. So by preventing these distant connections, it allows for the neg to have a reasonable chance in winning a debate. This is also important for education because it allows us to be educated on the topic at hand. While there may be obscure cases that may increase education for the app, or it's not going to increase the overall education in debate because they're being inherently off topic, which is going to cause yeah, I'm just going to stop time there.
Okay. 8 minutes of prep starting now. Stop. We have 6:57.
Okay.
Can I run to the restroom really fast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Infinitely harder than the local tournament we went to 3 weeks ago.
What tournament did you go to?
We just went to like Cypress Lake, some random local tournament. Cypress Woods, we went to some random Houston local tournament.
This tournament is like one of the best tournaments in the country.
Yeah. I never made it into this tournament when I was in high school.
No, I was supposed to come for LD because I've like done LD before and I like kind of to an extent know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then the coach was like, no, you have to do policy at the tournament if you're going.
That sucks.
Yeah. That's so I did LD in 7th grade.
Mm.
And then in 8th grade, my coach told me that I had to be in policy. And I was like, no, I don't want to work with other people. I want to work by myself. And I was like, I don't want a partner. And then I've done policy for 8 years now. So Never mind then, on that one.
My dad did policy debate back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Wow. I think like those debate generations are wild.
Yeah, they've got some interesting stories. There's a girl on my like circuit back home whose dad claims he invented the value criterion part of LD. He's like, I was the first person to read values and criterions. And I was like, I don't know if I believe you, but also like, who am I to say you're not? Like, run with it, man. If you're telling a lie, you're really fooling a lot of people right now.
No, yeah, my dad says he had this partner when he was in high school, and he would just literally claim everything was from this like a random made up source. He was like, according to Mark Smith from California at Berkeley.
That's what I do when I do extemp. You all have extemporaneous speaking?
I did extemp back in middle school.
Yeah, I did that all of high school. I had to do all, I've done every NSDA event except for PF.
Yeah, if I weren't doing policy, I'd be doing LD extemp.
I just have like a video of a dog in front of a sunset playing on loop on my computer right now, not because I pulled it up, but just because I clicked on the Twitter tab and that was the first thing that was there, and it's just been kind of like relaxing.
That sounds very pleasant.
Yeah. Just chill.
Just listening to some policy novices read 8-minute theory K arguments, even though we have no idea how to run a K.
Why did they tell you that we were gonna not read a K app?
Because they read the paradigm, it was like, I like traditional cases. They
Things
were
that
like,
I'm most familiar with.
yeah.
I did, and yeah.
Yeah, but they were like, yeah, they're definitely
Say that.
not gonna run a K.
Oh. I'm sorry, Mom. It's pretend.
Yeah.
We don't have another app.
We're running the default Saudi drone app, so.
That's the first time people are reading stuff. This is my first time on this topic, and I was helping coach like my like local urban debate league from back home, and I was like, why is everyone reading Saudi Arabia? It's like, this is literally everyone.
Yeah.
It's like, good lord.
Yeah.
You really only have to prep one app on this topic and then the K app. It's
Right.
done.
So true.
No, when we were at the local tournament, we hit some weird app.
Yeah.
What was it?
Small arms?
Mexico.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it was like, we should stop selling small arms to Mexico because Mexico can just defend against drug cartels with tanks.
I
love Texas.
debates.
Do you need those cards or do you have them?
I don't know.
No, I have them. Oh, I didn't send them out. Okay. I'm just gonna, is everyone cool if I just send them out in the, like, body of the email?
Yeah.
Very cool.
I judged at the like Pflugerville swing tournament at the beginning of the season, and I had to judge LD, and the topic is about like whether or not standardized testing should be considered in college admissions. And I was in 3 different rounds where the kids, the AF compared the SAT to the Holocaust, and I was like, I was like,
No, because
what?
the LDs on our team were like, they're all like, perpetuates Jim Crow laws and
Yeah,
like racism.
yeah, and they compared it to Jim Crow, and I was like, it's like, what a time to be alive, honestly.
Interesting.
We're making some decisions, I don't know if they're the right ones.
Yeah.
But they were said.
There was, there's like a thing going on, like the ACT wanted to give people, what's like diversity points?
Mhm.
Have you heard about that?
I heard about it because like, I judged those debates, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it got shot down.
Yeah, like immediately all of the white people in the Midwest were like, no, don't take away our privilege. I was like, interesting. All right, is everybody good? Do we have the email?
Yeah.
I just, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. The order's gonna be case and then T.
Okay.
The war against terrorist relations of the global periphery, subjecting thousands of civilians to the constant threat of surgical violence in the U.S.'s attempt to eliminate the queer terrorists. These civilians represent the queer collateral subject, always at the risk of unwarranted violence. We must become the gay bomb hacking technologies and fears and means towards new imaginings of utopian futures and potentials unimaginable through traditional metaphysical framing of liberal human purity. This new social flux is imperative to depathologizing affective fear attached to the queer body. Extend war 7. This round is only a question of our orientation to affectivity because fear is inevitable. You should prefer the affirmative orientation. We harness technologies and fear to become the gay bomb. They conceded that fear is the only and is like the only impact within the space. Means that like means the counter interpretation is necessarily important because we are the only team that has a method to like actually create change. Vote affirmative to endorse our theoretical method of gave on student of rupture, assemblages, home nationalism, and reject debates of capitalistic training ground that results in technocratic violence there. 250 evidence we're not anti-state. We work through, we hack into the system to control that step, screws and temple, but we turn the argument, we turn it, where is it? Because it says post-colonial queer politics must explore strategies of converting poison into counter-poisoners. Feedback to make manus evidence specifically highlights that the method of the affirmative hacks into fear to make counter-fear, or hope, i.e. utopia. Yeah, Dwan doesn't link. Also, the spade 11 evidence, so there's no link. We use the system to go through the system, and the opposite prerequisite to politics is that Neg understands reconceptualizing materialities of life through provides more radical strategies for thinking about democracy. Ruffalo and 9. Busker approach to thinking about the contemporary politics, post-queer theorization, rethinking to doing, driving, meaning politics, by how changing how we think about the participants of the political movements, rethinking of materialities, life after how life is materialized, and provide more radical strategies for thinking about democracy itself. And the next appeal to linear political organizing urgency against the always becoming force of chaos, where it produces a problematic relationship but to temporality and ensures response on 4 and 7. Always becoming elusive states emerging time with the strategic helistic cyclical pattern of stability, rupture, and big, claiming terms non-linear when insufficient, less reminded might produce rather than suppress, disentangle, politicals and social chaos, industry, political urgency suggests a particular relation of temporality and change. On framework. Extend the counter-interpretation. The affirmative must have an affective affirmation of the topic. Extend the detection of activities that benefit their model of debating abuses with skills in education based on reading affirmatives about justice and violence and claiming to have the impact. Extend the kind of grounds leaders funneled into corporate and government positions where they can use things like they learn in policy to propagate use hegemony and homo nationalism. This turns any education claim to make it as an independent reason to vote affirmative. And this time we meet their actor. We've specified that it's Jacqueline and I and the ballot. Cool. First is that states a point to make arms sales is a better states point than USFGA. This is better for education. The USFG stays the same every year, but somehow no one reads the same after 2 years ago because gut check. It's an arms sales topic, not the USFG core generics, like the politics society and the condition counterpoint that the NEGWAX doesn't give us portable skills. Rather, arms sales is that stasis allows us to effectively analyze the implications of arms sales. B, the negative can select all of their grounds, the limited nature of the counter-interpretation that solves all of their arguments and the impact of the top-level impact from use from the entirety of the impact of the conceded palatability to sell extend that here first. Control societies outweigh their standards. Thus, in case means you should vote you should have a very low threshold for the two external impacts the death side causes. A is self-monitoring, identifying our greatest systematic deviance means we constantly project respectability. Politics on others to better expunge our own deviance, which means their interpretation justifies a violent form of self-flagellation until we've embodied their idealized selfhood. And B is monitoring others. Identifying others as deviant means we always fight no subversive movements against moment organizations and sadly becoming way the entire sense of positionality is often against the interpretation on fairness. A, it turns friendly because their discourse of what a fair debate space should look like only exacerbates the link by contrasting our move to the fringes to images of fair or homonormative instances of queerness. Jacqueline, do you want to just set up the 1A? But solving fairness is impossible. Structural restrictions like coaching, funding, speed exist under any model. Debate doesn't exist in a vacuum, and their standards assume equal accessibility, which reifies homo nationalistic norms. And B, even if they're winning structural gaps in necessity procedural fairness, how much anti-queer violence should be acceptable to achieve that goal? Fairness shouldn't be an intrinsic good if it requires policing, deviance. And 3, don't let them claim to use a formula. Decided this is an end of the presentation of our model of debate itself. It's also for external offense against the TVA because it only can be the epitome of palatable queerness. One of points and outlines alternative education areas when the cogs aside. The next model turns debaters into cogs in a machine to serve capitalistic and imperialistic and the skills in education they claim to listen to. Then I guess to provide any of their education is unique to the USFG, and if it is, we're putting that education is back to the detached activities as I'll say that work above and 3, fiat turns education. They ignore the way policy works anyways, meaning they don't actually get an inroad into topic education and limits is wrong extent to becoming this, that everything is constantly in flux. I mean, there is no such thing as predictable limits. This impact is not unique and leads to response when attempting impossible tax creates inescapable self-hatred. This is the only internal link to education. I mean, there is literally no way that we can have any predictable education under their interpretation, and they had ground. The case to solve, but to do more work on that in a minute, but it also leads to the becoming dissent because ground is always changing and stable. Ground is a flawed idea on research. It's just an internal link to education. We've already turned that above. I don't need to do more work on it than I already have. On the TVA. Except the strategic disengagement, this how the neg just wants our generic politics sets that encountering condition counterpoint and never actually to engage with the app. They don't let them read into TVA in the 2 and R. There's only so much time for the 1 year to respond to it. On switch side of it. So one switch side doesn't solve or often say the proven instance of a resolution being good to win, we should defend it. Otherwise the supercharged link to the civic homosexuality. Just said that was on the TVA debate too. Discussing gave us the office uniquely key to accessing our discussion. Next strategy informed of the 1AC and relegates our argument to the back burner. 8 minutes of the 1AC means everyone has to listen and the neg actually has to engage for terms of benefit of the switch side debate and it's all offense for us. Also the case list solves all of their offense. They could have read Baudrillard, state good, capitalism, anti-blackness, and word picks, Orientalism. They could have read their AF on the neg. The lack of a TVA proves that there's literally no way to have a topical version of the AF. We win that our education is not good. We win the debate.
What, like a minute of prep left?
Oh, I just said if we could send out the 1 AR. Because I just didn't send out
Oh.
blocks. And I realized that in the middle of my speech that I should have.
I was like, did you what with the 1 AR?
Yeah, sorry.
Do you?
That's okay.
You may as well practice your rebuttals. That's what you need to work on.
Do I?
I
like what they have and just try to.
Just talk about everything that's supposed to be good about debate and all the great things it's supposed to do for you and how it's.
Just continue the tea argument.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why.
What?
That's why we're on the bottles, because
Yeah.
they have that fast, like, a lot of time.
Just work on explaining tea. No, you don't need to be very. Actually, you might need to reread some of the tea arguments. It's the when it's just got some like piece of comic, just like go over and talk about like why it's important. Okay, that's our time. Just like work on talking, like try to talk for 5 minutes.
I'll give you a goal of 3 minutes. See if you can get through at least like straight up talking for 3 full minutes.
Give me a second.
This round is no stressing, just work.
Dude, I stopped.
It's just like you're talking in front of Mr. Foster.
Dude, that's like, talking in front of Foster is like more stressful.
I was
than
gonna
this,
say,
'cause,
I
like, this is
hated
like,
talking in front
I
of my
know what this
coach.
is.
We don't have a real coach. It's just, we're the only policy team.
Oh yeah.
So start it. Yeah, it's up.
Okay, no, that's. Okay, just.
Don't reread it, but like,
Um.
make a, give a 3-minute speech.
I'll reread it. Time starts now. Substantially reduce a military contract means a 25% reduction in the value of the contract. 10 USC 2501. Description of various components contractors produce commercial items controlled under the AECA USML. Terminal or substantial reduction in a major defense programs. The Secretary of Defense shall identify each contract under major defense programs of the DoD that will be substantially reduced. Definitions: the term substantial reduction and substantially reduced with respect to a defense contract means the reduction of 25% or more in the total dollar value of the funds obligated by the contract. To reduce the value of the contract, the AF must amend the contract, cancel the contract, or modify the contract. Suspensions don't change the value. DSCA 19. Suspension and cancellation. Suspension of delivery is not the same as FMS case cancellation or contract termination. Action. DSCA notifies when suspensions are lifted. New LOA are not signed. Contracts that have been awarded continue, however, material en route to the country is not delivered. It is retained under the USG control. FMS cases may be amended or modified to accommodate changes. The scope of the cases is a key to consider in deciding an amendment, modification, or new LOA. Scope change takes place when the original purpose changes reflect through an increase or dollar value. Major increases in scope such as addition or deletion equipment, a new LOA, an amendment, dollar value increases or decreases to blanket orders, addition or deletion of requirements, revising line items, description or notes to increase and decrease scope. U.S. unilateralism change to an FMS case are used by modification and do not require acceptance by the purchaser. Changes that may be done using a modification, increasing or decreasing line values, revising the terms of sales. Case cancellation, the USG may cancel a case or any part of a case when U.S. national interest requires. That's chapter 1 limits. There are infinite permutations of possible conditions that massively expands topic and makes neg research impossible. Ground 2. Ground. A country complying means that there might not be a reduction in sales, allowing the app to spike out of all desired length. Position. Third position, we are reading defining substantial reduction from U.S. code and the agency that handles sales arm. Violation. They do not fit the resolution to the strict expectation justified by the need to balance AF and net ground through the interpretation standards. Net ground. It is impossible that our opponent remains strictly topical. It is important that our opponent remains strictly topical to the resolution as to balance AF and net ground, fairness, and education. To keep rounds productive and educational, we need to make sure we have a stable balance in arguments. Further, the ballot must go to the negation because otherwise it sets a precedent that hurts net ground and fairness education. Debate topicality is a stock issue alongside solvency, harms, and heresy and significance deemed of utmost importance in debate round. I'll stop there. It's clear that our opponent is just trying to get an easy win by using an app that is non-topical and is hurting our education. There, it's clear that our opponent does not care about our education or being on topical. They are here for an easy win, so that to further themselves in this game, as they call it. They do not see this as educational whatsoever. As they say themselves, this is a game for them to win. They absolutely do not care about our education, and for that fact, staying on topical. So we have a fair round between AF and neg. They are making the research look for us impossible, and yeah, I think I'll just take time there.
Only 2 sheets of paper, must be one motion.
So we'll twist it. And that's why I wanted our order. So. Is anybody not ready? The war on terror operates through surgical drone violence and the deregulated borderlands. The collateral queer subject is that which can be killed at any moment by distant powers. The living death is rationalized as a necessary sacrifice to eliminate the queer terrorists. The war on terror is justified through assumptions of homo nationalism. The U.S. constructs a whitened capitalist patriotic gay to contrast to the radical queer terrorists in order to justify the war on terror, i.e. the scripting of queerness onto Osama bin Laden's body alludes to this fear of the perverse queer sexuality, and Trump's comments after the post-nightclub shooting allude to the way that homo nationalism is utilized as a justification for the war on terror. Vote after the way the gay bomb. The gay bomb represents a discursive hacking that redirects fears and motive control away from the queer terrorists towards creating queer futurities through a concept becoming scrambling the us versus them used to justify the war on terror. There are 2 impacts to your act ballot. First is the theoretical deployment of the gay bomb against assumptions of homo nationalism that acts as our war on terror impact, and second is the in-round solvency of the detached affectivities that matter. Fear is the inevitable production of the affective economy, which means that this debate is only a question of our relationship to fear. The gay bomb depathologizes the affectivities of fear. It attaches the figure of the queer terrorists. That also means that you prefer a counter-interpretation because it's the only model in this run that accounts for affectivities and on framework. Key framing issue. They have failed to articulate a coherent impact framework that lowers your threshold for voting affirmative versus their model, links to our offense, and extend the counterterm, asks us to defend a affective affirmation of the topic. They can see that the affect is never, which means it is only a question of our relationship to affectivities in this debate round, and extend the disembodied affectivities that benefit. This is an independent reason to vote affirmative and impact the ballot resolves. It is a required question in this round that comes before any of the next offense because the ballot can't resolve fairness education, but it can resolve our relationship to our argument. Extend the causes and the machine test that they make debate a game in which you're constantly trying to level up, which makes the gamification of the workforce. The proliferation of disembodied apps gives people like Carl Rose the skills they need to leverage their opinions into shitty policies. It also allows people to view actual violence as just scenario planning, which is also entering the military-industrial complex and making a cycle of war planning that results in actual violence, but debaters have distanced themselves from this impact on the ground debate. The stasis which should be arms without the use of cheat is net, but it promises what solves core generics constantly get recycled. Debates coming about conditions, consequences, and politics decides year after year rather than the substance of arms control and circulation. The case that solves the spike out of Blake arguments, I'll read it again. Afro-pessimism, Salakotism, cap, dark to lose, liberalism good, John Sharp's good, save the political hedge just said, but tie, semi, cap, etc. And the neg still gets ground so well the negative is defend the status quo or competitive method. And it incentivizes citizens to actually understand the implications of arms control just beyond USFG action, which is net better for education. And I'll do that later actually, yeah. On the limits debate, key framing issues, the becoming dissent controls all their internal links to procedural fairness and education. We are winning metaphysical claims about how debate operates. As will still push limits, even if you vote next. So that only results in a result of a debaters constantly trying to conform to topic limits that are changing, making it impossible to find a truly predictable app that it cannot be beat on topicality. You must evaluate these metaphysical frames before writing a ballot that claims to solve their standards, and it doesn't. On the fairness debate, extend the palatability that said even if TZ Floyd still necessitates these certain ordinings and bodies, a reading of framework is an ideal model of how queer debate should exist in this space, which is always condensed. It's using deviant seduction. This is the logic of the grid in which we are constantly trying to ascribe to this palatable queerness. And there are 2 impacts. First is self-monitoring, identifying a queerness symptomatic of deviance, means we constantly project our ability to build politics onto ourselves in order to better explain our own deviance, which means that their trip justifies a violent form of self-flagellation until we've identified that we've embodied their idealized centeredhood, and second is monitoring others. The identifying others as deviant means they always footnote subversive movements against whole organizations and stats becoming. That also turns any of their education claims because it means that we never actually engage with these political discussions because we're constantly footnoting these subversive movements. And even if debate is a game, you should ask yourself how much anti-queerness should be tolerated for the sake of the game. They said that we're just trying to win an easy win. We're just trying to get an easy win with our app, but our counter-interrupt specifically limits out debaters' abilities to read a disembodied app for which they have no affective connection just for the win, like the Glenbrooks reading a ton of weird policy apps that don't have any relation to the topic. Like we literally specifically preclude this, and we said that they don't care about our education. First of all, we turn education with the concession of the stasis point and strategic disengagement. This proves that our education is net better because we actually understand the implications of arms control and the anti-affectivities that benefit, and they haven't forwarded a region why USFG's education is net better, but we have specific reasons why our education is key to our subject formation. They said debate is game. We make debate more than a game. The counter-term means that we have an active connection to the arguments we read. Vote AF. The palatability disad turns fairness. The stasis point turns education. Limbs are impossible. They have no impact. Different. And the assholes.
Wait, so like what is a KF?
So like, there are, you know, like people will read critiques.
Somewhat. I'm really bad with those.
Okay,
Oh,
is literally just any app that doesn't read a plan.
Okay.
It just like you can still advocate to do something,
Okay.
but if it's not like USFG specific action or like topical specific action, it would be considered a KF.
Okay. So like, what do you read against a KF?
T. Sometimes. I mean, I'm not going to tell you to read anything other than T because I think if you tried to implement something else at this tournament, it would be very difficult to learn something in this time frame. So I would
like,
suggest...
There's like one critique that I have, and I've got a friend who like knows what he's talking about. Like Cap K, it's like the only thing.
The Cap K is the other thing that a lot of people read against apps like this.
Okay.
In the one in C, you read TUSFG, which is all you need against fans.
Okay.
And yeah, I think that's good. And I mean, like, even like the answers you put on case that were read in the 2 and C were like good answers, and like you could have like totally run with them.
Okay.
Even if like when you pull them out, you're like, these are random cards I've never read before. Take time to read them during prep time. To be like, okay, this is what it's saying. I can just say that. That kind of stuff.
I was so lost that entire round.
That happens.
Another good thing about like rounds like these is tuning your ears to the sound of spreading. It seems like you're not picking up on anything, but like just listening to it for like so long, you start to recognize the pattern.
I almost don't even know if it was the spreading. I just think I didn't understand like the concept that they were trying to like discuss.
Yeah.
It took me about like 3 months to learn FWAR. So
To learn what?
the main theory that we read where a lot of this is predicated off of, we read other authors too. But FWAR is like where a lot of the theory comes from, and it's like really complicated.
Yeah,
when you're not familiar with it at all, it's very confusing.
Because like the spreading, like I did LD, so I like spreading's not really the problem. It's just the fact that I've like not heard any like thing like that before.
Yeah.
And I was like,
But that's definitely read
What
a
are-
Queer Utopias app last
what are
year,
they getting
so.
at?
You did?
Yeah, I did actually.
What author?
I cannot remember the name now, but basically it's this like whole book that's like Munoz is wrong about futurity, but it's because he like puts too much hope into like physical action, into like and forces like queer people to do the work to make utopias happen, but instead let's create the utopia right here. Like your ethical job is to make this a utopia in like here and now, because if we try to project it into the future, then it will just be stopped, and then that causes things like resentment, that kind of thing. And if we try to, like, obviously we can't put it into the past, it's just like revisionist, but the only thing we can do is make the space now an actual utopia for queer folks.
I wanted to run like a true, like, we're like open queer utopias, but that's not really what the app is about. That's not the app. I wanted to run a queer utopia for a really long time, I just couldn't figure out a topic.
That's the hard part, is like the topic part, which it seems like you don't put work into the topic part of it, but you do. It's hard to write a K-app that has at least a little bit to do with the topic. I would know. I'm literally writing an Andro app right now, and it's very hard.
Oh.
Yeah. I went vegan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
This tournament sucks.
Oh,
They said they were gonna have vegan cheese for the potatoes, and they don't.
What?
Yeah, it was on the menu, so I just ate a potato. And salad, obviously, but like
The salad toppings here are really good though.
raw tofu.
Yeah. I also have a very low bar for salad toppings
Yeah.
because I love Caesar salad.
Oh. See, I can't even have Caesar dressing though.
Wait, really?
There's
Is it
anchovies in it and dairy.
That
Ooh.
sucks.
Yeah.
It's like so much like random stuff.
Yeah. In everything. But like the funniest thing to me about going vegan was finding out this stuff like I can eat Reese's Puffs cereal. That's
You can
totally
eat
vegan.
hot Cheetos and Girl Scout Thin Mints.
Yes, I did know that because I was like researching. I was like, what Girl Scout cookies can I still eat? I was like, this is very important. I was like, I gotta know. And I was like, and it better not just be the Sandies. I don't want no pecan Sandies or whatever they're called.
Gross. Have you ever made, well, I guess you're vegan, no. But I was gonna say, like, Thin Mint cheesecake.
Oh,
It's,
cheesecake is like one of my favorite foods.
me too.
I'm terrified of making a vegan version because you have to like, I don't know how to say this without sounding weird. You have to soak your own nuts for like hours.
No.
Like in order to
yeah.
make it and like make them out of it. And everyone says it's really good, but like it does not sound fun. And I'm
Might
like,
be
is it
worth
worth it?
I feel like it might be.
They also have frozen ones at some stores. But I live in a food desert, so I don't really have access to a lot of vegan foods. So I literally will drive to Dallas to go to Whole Foods so I can get vegan food. Yeah.
Do you still go to Waco, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Waco, I said Waco.
I go to Waco, yes.
You go to Waco.
I go there a
Waco.
lot.
How do you, I'm thinking about applying there.
Yeah, do it. Absolutely.
Are
Yeah.
y'all both seniors?
I am.
Yeah, we have 2 full ride scholarships for the debate team. So,
Yo,
yeah. It's called the CAP. It hooks you up.
that's pretty nice.
Yeah. And we're recruiting, that's for sure.
I heard y'all didn't get any recruits last year.
Yeah, and then we had like 3 out of nowhere, and then we were like, oh.
Oh. Solid.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should ask. Oh, yo? No.
Oh,
Wait for us. Yeah, no.
Well, thank you for judging.
No problem.
So is it? I think so. Just for the big board.
Oh,
The
I didn't know